Howdy, this is Group 13's video project on sheep shearing. Each member completed their own research and writing, then compiled it with one another. We decided to have a single video editor to simplify the process. The topic of shearing sheep is one that many people have conflicting opinions on. Animal welfare groups, such as PETA, often release articles over such topics that contain false information and images. These articles cause concern for the well-being of the sheep and result in protesters towards the industry. Statements from these articles claim that injuries are caused by rough handling before, during, and after the shearing process. People that do not stand with the wool industry view shearing as unnecessary and harmful towards the animals involved. Sheep that are bred today grow a large amount of wool in order to be as efficient and profitable as possible. The claims that shearing sheep is unnecessary fail to understand that with the amount of wool they grow, the extra weight and heat is added to the body. When a sheep gets too hot, they are prone to suffer from heat exhaustion that can result in the death of the animal. The weight of the wool, if left on the body for a prolonged period of time, will cause tension and irritation to the skin. This is uncomfortable for the sheep and their efficiency will decrease dramatically. Some potential welfare issues that come along with shearing sheep include being put into uncomfortable positions while being sheared, which stress them out and can lead to sporadic behavior, thus resulting in them getting nicked by the shears. A new way of shearing, without the use of tools, uses injections, so the wool may fall off naturally with the hopes to vastly reduce the negative mental stress of shearing. A welfare research team evaluated 24 merino sheep by offering them 3 ambiguous, unreinforced bucket locations and the learnt locations before and after shearing, then looked at whether they displayed a more positive judgment bias approaching the ambiguous situation or a more negative one by refusing to approach any of them. The study proved that shearing is only an acute stressor for sheep, and they displayed a more optimistic behavior patterns following shearing. Oftentimes, with no background knowledge of how the sheep shearing industry works, we will see ads from organizations such as PETA, which showcase misleading and graphic images of how sheep are left after the shearing process. In this PETA ad, the man is holding what appears to be a limp, dead sheep with many injuries due to shearing. This causes the shearing industry to be put in a negative light because the audience believes that this image is the common result of shearing sheep. While many people believe that the shearing industry is inhumane and cruel, the research conducted in this article proves that the industry is constantly looking for methods to find the most efficient way to shear sheep while still keeping the stress levels and injuries of the sheep as low as possible. With the mixing of isolation, upending, and wool removal, it gives strong counter-arguments to those who believe the shearing is unnecessary and cruel by showing the efforts of trying to make shearing less stressful by minimizing physical and social disruptions to the sheep. This popular press article written by The Guardian defends the shearing of sheep. The Guardian disputes PETA's claim that it is cruel to shear sheep. It discusses how it is crueler to leave the wool on because they cannot shed their wool. Every year, as wool continues to grow, it weighs down the sheep and causes numerous health issues that can lead to death. This peer-reviewed article discusses how climate conditions affect the sheep's reaction to heat. An experiment was performed to test how the sheep's temperature changed after being sheared in different levels of heat and humidity. It concluded that sheared sheep performed better in hot and wet conditions, but had counter-reactions in dry heat. In this article from PETA in the Scotsman News, it claims that there are all kinds of cruelties in the sheep shearing shed. It's also said that cruelty was found in all 24 shear sheds that were visited. Continuing, saying that paying by volume makes workers work at breakneck speed and mercilessly to obtain certain pay. Saying they saw all kinds of obscenities from animals being knocked out and punched in the face. Also pointing out the shearing is robbing the wool from them just as we do a fox. All in all, this says that we should ditch wool because of its cruel ways. This study helps solidify the positive effects that shearing can have on the sheep. It goes into detail of the study that took place between shorn sheep and unshorn sheep by observing their body surface temperature, water intake, respiratory rate, relative temperature, and humidity of the environment. They found that shearing dramatically reduces surface temperature, surface body temperature, water intake, and respiratory rate. The study's results thus determined that the stress wool can have in heated temperatures, and for us to determine the optimal shearing time is for sheep. A press article by CNN told the story of a lamb whose life was saved by shearing. With having over an extra 90 pounds on the lamb named Chris would not have made it if it weren't for shearing. This amount of extra weight is overbearing on animals and lessens not only the quality of life, but also their functionality as a whole. Shearing, like keeping the animal cooler, and most importantly, it allows for the extra area around the udders to stay much more clean than if there were to be wool, allowing for a much more sanitary environment for the lamb kids. However, the study proved that mid-pregnancy shearing had no effect on the overall birth weight or gestation of the lambs. Victoria, a state in Australia, has a large growing number of wool producers. With technology and new ways of ranching, they are able to produce more wool on the same land. With this new increase in production comes new demand in the number of shearers. The Victorian government decided to fight this issue by allocating $1.2 million to train sheep shearers. They have recognized that the more qualified and trained shearers are, the quality in the wool rises and the chances of harm decreases. This will protect the sheep and the economy in this area. This study covers the effects on a lamb when shearing a ewe mid-pregnancy or postpartum. Over 4 years, ewes were shorn mid-pregnancy or postpartum, and they would study each timing's impact of birth weight and survival rate. The study concludes that a lamb born from a ewe that was shorn mid-pregnancy had a greater chance of survival and a higher birth weight than a lamb born of an ewe with that was shorn postpartum. The study concludes that a lamb born from a ewe that was shorn mid-pregnancy had a greater chance of survival and a higher birth weight than a lamb born of a ewe that was shorn postpartum. This article shows that just shearing at a certain time improves the lambs that are birthed. This article by PETA focuses on the sheep shearing operations in Scotland and generalizes the entire industry based on that limited scope. The article states that the level of violence in the footage is almost certainly the rule for the industry based on what they saw, and even goes so far as to dismiss the shearing industry leaders' claims that this is not the standard. The article goes on to list pre-existing health conditions that sheep had that had nothing to do with the shearing process, which diminishes the credibility of their claims. This article was specifically interested in the transmission of cholosoids between sheep. The two main variables in the experiment were the breed of the sheep as well as whether or not they had been sheared. Our main focus was the shearing. Through the different testing procedures, there was no significant difference in the transmission rates between the sheep that had been sheared compared to sheep that had been not. This shows that shearing is not detrimental to sheep in regards to transmission of cholosoids. This concludes Group 13's presentation. We hope you enjoyed, and please grade kindly. Thank you.